Hello gamers, Matt Lemke here with another book review. Well, today we're going to take a look at the Pathfinder campaign setting of the Inner Sea. It's their world guide. Now, I am not a big fan of world guides, but this one is actually packed full of content, and you can pretty much use it in any game you want, even though it's specifically designed for the Pathfinder world. There's a lot of information in here that you can easily convert for yourself. I generally do not use world settings. I create my own. I'm funny like that. But real quick, brief overview. We have the races. Then we have the Inner Sea, which is really the bulk of the book. It goes from page 30 to 210. The book is 316 pages. So there's a lot of meat there. And then it talks about religion, which is a really good part of the book. And then it breaks down the societies based off of race and city and languages in the city and weather, climates. We did a real good job of detailing that out. And then they talk about some of the core factions of the game, like the different knights and the Pathfinder Society specifically. There's a lot of good information there. And then they have some adventuring things, like where actually most of the rules come in play in this chapter, which is one of the smallest chapters in the book. They have some prestige classes, feats, equipment, spells, magic items, etc. But there are a few things that I want to point out in this book. It starts off first by doing an introduction of the whole world. They give you this map. Well, actually, wait, before we even get too far, let's do this. Let's open up the back and let's show you what they give you as a gift. In my opinion, this thing is, this is massive. This map is easily 18 by 36 inches. It's a wall mount map. This thing is, it's the map that you can get off their wiki easy enough, but it goes on the wall. It's got a nice chart on it. I can't even zoom out enough with the camera to get a picture of this. So we'll just go ahead like this real quick. Set that off to the side. Now, there's a few things in this book that are pretty important to know and understand. The introduction is pretty important, but this map is the map that is in the back, effectively. And then they go through all the basic the races. Yeah. But every page, see, what I wanted to show you with this on every page is they have chilaxians, and then they have this inset. And they go through and they tell you pretty much where they want to live, favorite names, etc., etc. And then they have a much more detailed one-page description of that race. Now, for example, they take a lot of time to talk about different types of humanoids in this book, which is really good because they break down all the different societies. Well, that's the first 30 pages or so of the book. But one of the things I want to show you that I think is really important, because I didn't know a lot about the Pathfinder system before this, is they have they have like a prehistory, and then they have a very in-depth timeline that pretty much runs, 15 pages or so. So there's about 10,000 years of history in the book. But there's a couple things that I really want to show you, and since Absalom's first, we'll just use that as our example. I wanted to show you this. They do this for every city center, a lot of the major cities that are in the Galarian campaign setting of the Inner Sea. The other thing that they do is, that I think is really cool, is they have this inset to show you where you're at when you're in the book. So you can flip through any section of the book here, and they will show you the basic region of where you're reading. So you can associate that with the larger map, or if you hang your poster up, you can associate it just by looking at the map on the wall. And then they give you a history, government, some of the major characters of the campaign setting. For example, they give you Lord Gear in this case, of the House of Gix. But now we're going to flip through to the next chapter. But before we do that, I want to show you how thick their campaign setting is when we're talking about the world. Look at that. Now, to give you some perspective, here's your basic base that comes in the Pathfinder Bestiary. So that's a 25 millimeter base. That's about a half-inch thick, people. That's just on all the different nations of Inner Sea. I mean, this book is really packed full of information. And if you love their fiction, this is definitely a book that you want to get to read. And there's a lot of history here. It makes things make more sense. And then, what good would it be if they don't have a little bit for you to expand on? They have Beyond the Inner Sea. There's a few pages on that. They have this nice little chart for other worlds, starting with the sun in their own solar system. Check out Brethida, the Cradle. It's got like 20 moons. And then they have a prehistory of before the Inner Sea, which is pretty cool. But then they really go into this section here, which I want to talk about a little bit, of religion. I don't want to do too much with it, but I do want to show you this chart that's pretty fundamental, I think. They break down all the core deities, their areas of concern, their domains, and their favored weapon for you on this page. And then after that, they go into much more detail. They even add a couple of domains, like they have the Void domain here. And then they have a brief description here on how to read your entries. But basically, you get 2 to a page. You get Abadar and Asmodeus on the same page. And again, they do a nice little breakdown here. This is basically what's in that chart. And then you just kind of flip through, and then they have a subsection in the back for other gods. I mean, the book is pretty good. And then they have Outsider. They go into demigods. They have archdevils, demon lords. And then they have something that I think is unique for a lot of game systems, is they've added philosophies in the religion section, which I think is pretty important. And then they go into the Great Beyond, which is basically inside the world of Pathfinder. And they go into all kinds of talk about the astral plane, nirvana, and then they go into life. And this is where you get into your breakdowns of barbaric tribes, the people, months of the year, festivals, languages, other languages, the weather and the climates, fauna and the flora, all kinds of good stuff. And then you get into the factions, which, if you're really into the factions, it's a good read. I kind of steered away from reading that section of the book at this point in time because I don't know a whole lot about Pathfinder yet. I did spend time to read about Pathfinder Society because it intrigued me and I did not know a lot about it. And I found it to be a good read. And then you get into adventuring, and there's a whole subsection on some of the different things that the classes can do. For example, barbarians occupy places that's where civilization has surrendered to savagery, and stuff like that. Some of the stuff is just common sense, but sometimes people don't put together common sense with logic. So it makes sense to me that barbarians are in places that are more savage, but it doesn't necessarily click with everyone else, and not every barbarian tribe works that way either. So, it's just some basic rules, basically. And then it talks a little bit about some prestige classes. For example, the Harrower is a new prestige class in the book. And then they have added the Hell Knight, which, again, a good sampling of their art. Their art is pretty good, as usual. And in the back, I believe there is an index, which is always a good thing. And, of course, I'm a liar. There is not an index. I thought there was. I must be thinking of the Ultimate. Oh, there is. There is a very good equipment index for the book. So, there you have it. The Pathfinder campaign setting, the Inner Sea World Guide, in a nutshell. This review was a little bit longer than I would normally do for a book review, but there's a lot in this book. There really is. I can't tell you. It really can't. You're going to have to read an in-depth review of this, and that might take some time to do because there's just so much material. Very little rules, a lot of fluff. Thank you. This is Matt Lemke with Through Gamer Goggles, gamer-goggles.com. You can always learn more about Pathfinder at Paizo.com. Thank you.